Hello, Packer Nation. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. This is our pregame show for Bengals versus Green Bay Packers, which will be held on the 12th. Today is October 11th, 2025. And usually I post the pregame show on a Friday because I want to get some time for everyone to digest it, get any thoughts to the keys to the game, etc., etc. But this game has so many repercussions as far as injuries and late breaking news that I decided to wait until Saturday afternoon so I could try to get you the most up to date information for Packers versus Bengals. If there is a significant development before the start of the game on Sunday, I will pop on and give you an update. But I think by waiting till Saturday, I've got some significant news and notes that are going to impact this game. So let's get right into it. Big news for the Packers fans, and it's not really a surprise, but Christian Watson has been ruled out for this game. I think it was kind of like an optimistic dream to think that he would play within a week of being activated off the PUP list. He's still very limited in practice. I would expect him to possibly make it for the Cardinals game next week, where I will be at. I'll be excited to be watching that game live, or possibly for Packers versus Steelers. If they do wait for Packers versus Steelers, I do think there's some significant benefit, and it ties in really well to the 21-day practice window, because if they wait until Packers versus Steelers, it will give the Packers a new wrinkle to give to the Steelers that they haven't seen on tape this year, the addition of Christian Watson. And I do think that the Packers can beat the Bengals without Christian Watson. I do firmly believe that they can also beat the Cardinals without Christian Watson. So the more I think about it, it really just tunes up very nicely to have Christian Watson be an activation right before Packers versus Steelers. So that's my prediction. Where he's had no setbacks in practice. He's just ramping up from going from individual rehab drills to full team drills, which he should have be up to business as usual before Packers versus Steelers. Now, they might decide that they want to push it and put him in at least for a few plays against the Cardinals. This is more likely to happen if there's some sort of an injury to the wide receiver core. But right now, my expectation is he will be there for the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, which would be a lot of fun. Some additional news I wanted to talk about. Micah Parsons was very frustrated after the game against the Cowboys. He had a personal investment in it. He feels like he and the defense let the rest of the team down by not getting a stop. One or two stops, and that would have easily been a win for the Green Bay Packers. So Micah Parsons had this to say. I'm quoting him here. "You know, you should be pissed off," Micah Parsons said. "We just gave up 40 points. We're talking about how we can't give up 20 and how we shouldn't lose games. This is how you lose games." So Micah Parsons showing some leadership here is very impressive. He also says, regarding the game this week, "We should punish these guys. We want to leave a statement. It should be a statement win. It should be a statement on defense. Running to the ball should be contagious. That's how we showed them statements those first couple of weeks. I told the guys, be phenomenal or be forgotten." So Micah Parsons is making his leadership shown here by trying to rally the defense from an embarrassing tie against the Cowboys, where they didn't play up to their standards, and saying, guys, we have to have a statement game this week. Now, the Packers defense is so good that if they're playing on all cylinders, this game should be a complete blowout against the Bengals. And that's what Micah Parsons is saying right now in that statement. On Bengals news, Jamar Chase is questionable for Sunday's game versus the Packers due to illness. He did make it through a walkthrough on Friday, but I don't know if he's traveled with the Bengals or not. I'm assuming he did travel with the Bengals, and Jamar Chase might truly be a game time decision for the Bengals. If he's feeling healthy enough on Sunday, it's very likely he will play. If he's far from 100% and he's at the point where he could risk an injury, that's where I think the Bengals would pull Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a key part of the offense, and the Bengals are really hoping that by the time Joe Burrow gets back, they can still be in the hunt for a playoff spot. That's much less likely if Jamar Chase suffers an injury, but I think he will be fine in this game. So I do expect Jamar Chase to be in the game, but it's important he won't be 100%. If he's suffering from an illness, it's likely he's going to be dehydrated. His energy is going to be lower than normal. It's just an opportunity for the Packers defense to have one more thing in their favor in this game if Jamar Chase is not 100%. So big news on Saturday, and this is a big part of why I'm posting this later than I usually do. The Packers have announced on Saturday they signed kicker Lucas Havarisk. That's how I'm pronouncing it. Sorry, Lucas, if I mispronounced your name. It's Havrisk. Havarisk. I think that's how that should be pronounced. At the NFL level, Havarisk got most of his action with the Rams in 2023. He's gone 11 for 11 on field goals under 40 yards, but he was only 4 of 9 for field goals plus 40 yards. He also missed 3 of 22 extra point attempts. His last action was in the XFL, where he led the league with a league-long 50-yard field goal. So he does have the leg for long field goals, but realistically, if he gets put into the game, the Packers are going to have that 40-yard field goal in mind. And I think if he is your kicker and you're outside of that 40-yard range and it's 4th and short, they're probably more likely to go for it because they don't know if he can make field goals on a consistent level outside of 40 yards. Now, Brandon McManus has come out several times this week and says he fully expects to play. So Lucas was added to the active roster. If McManus is fine, he will start the game as normal, but this gives the Packers a lot of options. Number one, if McManus has an injury in pregame or he doesn't feel like he's good to go, they can go with the backup kicker. Also, if he's injured during the game, let's say he re-aggravates the injury on a kick, which is very likely because it is his kicking leg, then they have Lucas available as a backup kicker. So it makes a lot of sense for the Packers to make this move. Any NFL team would make a similar move. It does not mean Brandon McManus is not going to play. I would put McManus's participation in this game on Sunday at probably about 95%. This is just a smart move for the Packers. Another news, and it has bigger impact than you think, the Packers also added Brant Banks, who was previously claimed by the Tennessee Titans, to their practice squad. Banks was promoted to Green Bay's practice squad in Week 4, and he was responsible for the blocked PAT kick against the Dallas Cowboys that really led us down a rabbit hole that led to a tie. So to make room for Banks, the Packers released Deslin Andre from the practice squad. So if you were a Deslin Alexandre truther, sorry, he's off the team. Now he could come back next week in the event that they feel that they have room for him. but it's very likely that they've moved on from Deslin Alexandre. Uh, the important thing here is the Packers did not elevate anyone from the practice squad before the deadline on Saturday. You have to disclose practice squad additions on Saturday before the close of league business. The fact that the Packers didn't do that tells me the offensive line we'll see on Sunday, at least at the start of the game, will be our starting lineup for the first time since week 1. This tells me Rasheed Walker should be good, Zach Tom should be good, and Aaron Banks will be good for this game, at least to start. Otherwise, the Packers would have elevated some players off of the practice squad. So that tells me to at least start the game, Walker, Tom, and Banks should be in your starting lineup, and we're going to have the first starting offensive line for the Packers since week 1. This is huge news, and not only that, but it also gives us critical depth because players like Jordan Morgan can be relied on as being a swing tackle, which is very important in this game because here's the situation. Anthony Belton has been ruled out for this game. So that means Jordan Morgan is most likely going to be your swing tackle for Walker and or Tom in the event of an injury, and both of those players are coming back from injuries. So Jordan Morgan is likely to get into this game at some point. Now, Rasheed Walker does have a quadricep injury, so that's right here in the shoulder and arm. So it's very important that Walker doesn't re-injure that because it could be a season-long injury. So looking into my crystal ball, if everybody starts and Zach Tom and Aaron Banks are feeling good, it would not surprise me if the Packers built up a lead and they pulled out Rasheed Walker and put Jordan Morgan in at left tackle for the rest of the game. Why do I feel that way? Because I think Rasheed Walker, of those 3 players, has the injury that's most likely to be re-injured. So watch that very closely. If the Packers get into a big lead, don't be surprised if they replace Walker with Jordan Morgan, assuming everybody else is healthy. So really good to see the depth coming back for the offensive line. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at this game in detail, look at some key matchups, look at the keys to the game, and see if we could give you a pathway to a Packers victory. So let's go there right now. I'm going to share my screen. Switch over to the game. All right, here we go. Sunday, October 12th. Kickoff is 2:25 here in Mountain Time because I'm in Colorado. It would be 3:25 local time for the Packers. So it's a late afternoon kickoff. The Bengals are 2-3. The Packers are 2-1-1 with only 1 loss in the season. Let's keep that in mind. It's very important as you look at the standings, especially with players losing like the Eagles. Interestingly enough, if the Packers do win this game, since the Eagles have already lost, they will actually move above the Eagles in the rankings for the conference because we only have 1 loss and the Eagles have 2 losses. Let's look at team metrics first for this game. Power ranking, we have the Bengals at 27, the Packers at 5. Defensive ranking, Packers are at 12th, and the Bengals are at 28. Now, it's important to keep in mind this 12th ranking for the Packers defense really has a lot to do with what happened with the Cowboys 2 weeks ago. But there's no reason not to expect the Green Bay Packers defense to get back to where they were playing previously. I believe the Packers defense, barring injuries and miscues, is a top 6 defense. So look for them to get back to that in this game against the Bengals. Power ranking on offense. The Bengals are 31st in the league. Packers are 5th. And that is adjusted for the number of games played. So the Packers, with a good game today, on Sunday, could end up being a top 4 offense and possibly move back into the seventh or 8th ranked defense. It's going to take a couple weeks for the Packers to get back to that top 6 defensively, but things are definitely going to move in the right direction with a nice win this week. Offensive snaps, the Packers have 68.8 versus the Bengals having 59.2. This is significantly increased by the game against the Cowboys, which was a true shootout. More likely, the Packers are probably going to get about 62, 63 offensive snaps in this game. The Bengals, interestingly enough, might see their average go up with their change at quarterback. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Run plays, the Green Bay Packers are 44.5% likely to run the ball, and the Bengals are only 31.4%. And a lot of that has to do with the Bengals having one of the worst rushing attacks in the NFL. And they're going up against a team that is elite at stopping the run. So I think that's going to be very important. Even with Devontae Wyatt out for this game, I do fully expect the Packers to dominate the run defense in this game. And the Bengals are going to quickly become one-dimensional if the Packers can consistently score and put pressure on the Bengals to score points. For pass percent, the Packers are at 55.5, which is a little heavy for them. Look for them in this game to try to get closer to 50-50 run versus pass. The Packers, one of the biggest things they need to work on as we build up for the game against the Eagles in a couple weeks, as well as the Steelers, is they need to get their run game consistently going. They want to be a 50-50 ball club when it comes to pass versus run. So look for them to work on that a lot in this game. It wouldn't surprise me if the Packers ended up running 55 to maybe even 60% of the time in this game, especially if they get a healthy lead and they're able to run efficiently. Let's look at EPA per run. The Bengals are a horrible minus 0.18, and the Packers are at less than desirable minus 0.1. You really want to see your EPA per play on runs to be at least -5 or better. So the Packers need to improve, but they're not nearly as bad as the Bengals at running the football. EPA per pass, Packers are 0.31, and the Bengals are minus 0.21. That is the lowest in the league for pass. Now keep in mind, the Bengals did make a move by signing Joe Flacco via trade. So will he be able to be more efficient as a pass thrower than what the Bengals have had so far this year? Too early to tell. So let's look at our quarterback comparison. We've got Jordan Love at a respectable 82.6. That's top 10 in the league. Versus Joe Flacco at 60.2. So there's a significant advantage in the passing game before you even factor in the fact that Joe Flacco has only practiced with his team 2 times before they had to travel to go to the Packers in Green Bay. So there's a significant advantage in the passing game here. Passing rating clean, Jordan Love is 140.3, which is amazing. Joe Flacco is only 78.5. So when Joe Flacco has a clean pocket, he's still a worse quarterback than Jordan Love. So that tells us a lot about this passing matchup. Passer rating under pressure, Jordan Love is 48.8. He needs to improve upon that. but Joe Flacco is only 31.5. So this defensive line is going to be going after Joe Flacco all the time. There's been a lot of frustration with the Packers and the fact that Micah Parsons doesn't have as many sacks as he normally would have in a season. He's been ramping up. He's adjusting to a new defense, but this game has a Micah Parsons sack breakout game written all over it. I expect Micah Parsons to get two sacks in this game. 2 sacks. 2 touchdowns would be nice too. But 2 sacks. I think Rashawn Gary is going to get at least a sack in this game. And I think Lucas Van Ness is going to get a sack in this game. So I think the Packers are going to have at least 4 sacks in this game based on their potential for production against a player like Joe Flacco has very limited mobility, and the Bengals have a very bad offensive line, as we're going to look at in a minute. So let's take a look now at injuries in this game. We've got, for the Bengals, Joe Burrow, as we know, is out. Jamar Chase is questionable. As I said earlier, I think he will play. Luke Patrick, which is a guard that's coming off the IR, I do expect them to activate him for this game, even though he just came off the IR this week, because they are very desperate for offensive linemen for the Bengals. Let's now look at the Packers. We know Jaden Reed is out. We know Watt is out for this game, which is a huge blow for the run defense. But I think the Bengals' weakness is going against the Packers' weakness in that situation. And we'll talk about that with the matchups in a few minutes. But I think they can survive without Wyatt this week. Nate Hobbs is questionable. He has a concussion. Now he could have been ruled okay before the game on Sunday. He might show up on Sunday and get activated off the concussion protocol. We just don't know about Nate Hobbs. He would obviously be a big benefit for the Packers to be on the roster for Sunday, but I think they can survive without him. We talked about Zach Tom. I expect him to play since they didn't activate anybody from the practice squad. Same thing with Rasheed Walker. I expect him to play. We have Cox out on injured reserve, and we have Aaron Banks also questionable with the groin injury, also expected to play. So I think the Packers are looking far better on injuries than it might look if you just look at the injury report, because I think a lot of these questionable players are going to be playing. Let's take a look at the spread right now. As of today, the spread is Packers minus 14.5. PFF expects them to win by 12.7, so not covering the spread. So if you're looking at bets this week, I would not take the 14.5. I think that is great, and I think the Packers have every ability to win this game by over 14.5, but I wouldn't bet money on it, and I won't be doing it on Sunday. I would be very comfortable betting the Packers to win and looking at key statistics that will help you get a large parlay together. And I'll probably post my parlay tomorrow morning once I put it together after we have an update on the injury reports. The break even for this game is 52.4. So the Packers are still heavily favored to win this game. And a lot of the money is going to the Bengals because of the very large spread and the Packers' struggles 2 weeks ago on defense. But I do expect the Packers to win this by a very healthy margin. So now let's take a look at the lineups here for the Packers. First of all, we're going to look at the Packers on defense. We're going to look at the base first because I do think the Packers are really going to try to establish the run. So what I want to do here is we're going to look at the Packers in two tight end formation, which is their running formation, and also their most efficient passing formation. So we're going to look at the two tight end set right now. Let's look at the Bengals secondary. Safeties are above average, but nothing to write home about. Linebackers, poor play in the linebacker position, except for Burks, who's 25th in the league for linebackers, an average linebacker. So there's really not a lot to stop the Packers from being involved in the passing game early and often. Looking at the safeties and the linebackers, look for this to be a big game for the tight ends for the Packers this week. These are not great coverage linebackers, so I do think the Packers are going to get consistent success from the tight ends in the short passing game this week. In particular, Tucker Kraft could have a big game. Let's look at the corners for the Bengals. Below average play here for Turner and Hill. Both of them are below average starters for the cornerback position. Significant advantage for the Green Bay Packers in the passing attack again. So looking at the passing attack for the Packers, we've got bad corners, okay safeties, and bad linebackers. So there's plenty of room for the Packers to stretch the field and have success at short, medium, and long range in the passing attack in this game, and I expect that to happen. Of course, they do have Hendrickson at right defensive end. Obviously, he is a big playmaker for them. Shamar Stewart is doubtful for this game. He's not likely to play. So I expect Shamar Stewart to be out for this game as doubtful, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Hendrickson to make plays because the defensive tackles do not make plays. Shamar Stewart is out, so the really only playmaker that the Bengals have on defense is Hendrickson, and the Packers can scheme around Hendrickson and be successful, especially since Hendrickson, unlike Micah Parsons, does not move around the field. He's always on right end. So the Packers can definitely scheme around Hendrickson and have success. Looking at the Packers on offense, Dobbs over Hill. I'll take Dobbs over Hill any day of the week. This should also be Matthew Golden, not Donatavian Wicks. I'll take Matthew Golden over Turner any day of the week. And we talked about Tucker Kraft having a field day against these linebackers. Look for Josh Jacobs to try to establish the run. That's going to be one of our keys to the game, is the Packers need to establish the run in this game. And I would love to see the Packers get to 50-50 run versus pass in this game. Jordan Love has been solid. I expect him to do so again. Let's look at 3 wide receiver sets for the Packers real quick. And we're going to look at the nickel defense for the Bengals. Does not get better for the Bengals because they bring in a third corner that's not as good as the other 2 corners. And we would have Dobbs winning more likely than not. We would have Golden winning more likely than not. And Wicks winning more likely than not, as well as Tucker Kraft. The offensive line for the Packers, this is a get-right game. As long as they stay healthy, I will be satisfied. If the Packers' offensive line stays healthy for this game, they should dominate the run and the pass attack in this game against the Bengals. Now let's switch over to defense. We're going to look at the Bengals on offense. Let's look at 2 tight ends first. All right. So we've got Jamar Chase if he plays against Hobbs. That is definitely an advantage. So if Chase is not at 100% or he's out of this game, this really helps the Packers run and pass defense because Chase could be less of a factor. Higgins against Nixon. I will take Nixon over Higgins any day of the week. Higgins will get his opportunities, but I think Nixon right now is playing at a very high level, and I think we'll be fine there. Let's look at the running backs for the Cincinnati Bengals. We have Brown. Bad running production from Brown so far this year. We have Joe Flacco, very mid quarterback. He's rated 30th out of 36 quarterbacks. Not going to be a problem coming out of this backfield at all. I'm not worried about Flacco. I'm not worried about Brown. Glisicki is a solid possession tight end, but he's not a game breaker. I expect our linebackers to do just fine against them. Look at this offensive line for the Bengals. Brown is not playing well. Fairchild not playing well. Caracas not playing well. Rivers not playing well. Mims not playing well. There is not a member of the offensive line for the Bengals that is a player that they could put their hat on against a player like Micah Parsons or Rashawn Gary. So on defense, they're going to have a field day. Brown against Parsons, major mismatch. Gary against Mims, major mismatch. And in fact, our defensive line, while not stellar with Wyatt out, is still a strength against the offensive line for the Bengals. So look for the Packers to have a really nice game from their defensive line. And looking at linebackers, Cooper's going to clean up a lot of mistakes on the defensive line. McDuffie has been solid in limited production, and Walker has been solid as well. So there aren't a lot of game breakers for the Bengals except for Jamar Chase and Higgins. If the Packers can get to Joe Flacco before Chase and Higgins can make big plays, it's going to be a long day for the Bengals. Let's look at nickel now for the Packers. And we're going to look at 3 wide receivers for the Bengals. Again, as always, we're going to have Hobbs, if he's healthy, moving into the nickel slot. And Carrington Valentine coming off the bench, who actually has better performance so far than Hobbs. So our secondary in 3 wide receiver actually gets stronger, whereas the Bengals actually get weaker because they have Chase and Higgins, and their slot receiver is not a significant threat. So there's a lot of benefit to later on in the game. Once the Bengals get down by a significant amount and they go 3 wide, it's really going to play to the Packers' favor. I would actually argue the Bengals are better in 2 tight end and taking their chances with the running game and maybe making a big play with Chase or Higgins. But strategically, 3 wide receivers is not a good look for the Bengals in this game at all. So that's my thoughts on the matchups. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think the Packers, if you put a gun to my head, I would say the Packers win 31-21. So a 10-point win, 31-21. 21 is my high for the Bengals offense in this game. I don't think the Bengals are going to get more than 21 points. I think the Packers will get at least 31 to 35 points in this game. So I think the Packers are going to maybe not cover the spread, but they're going to win very comfortably, and it's going to be a fun game to watch. So I'm going to come back tomorrow afternoon. I should be able to do a quick pregame show right before the game, where I'm going to go over any last-minute news and notes, the last-minute injury information. We're going to get updates on McManus, and I'm going to give you my parlay pick for this game. So keep an eye out for that right before Packers versus Bengals, and we'll see you after the game, either probably Monday morning, to break down a likely Packer victory on Monday. So that's an update on what we're going to be doing to cover this game. Once again, we're going to have a update right before the start of the game, as well as my parlay pick for the game. And then also, I'm going to give you a breakdown of hopefully the Packers' victory on Monday morning. We'll see you then. And as always, go Pack Go. I hope you guys enjoy the game. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. And hopefully the Packers get back to being an elite team on offense and defense against the Bengals. See you after the game.